Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Mary Connealy. Mary is a best-selling author renowned for her unique blend of Western romance and humor. We're chatting today about the first book in her highly anticipated Golden State Treasure series, Whispers of Fortune. In this book, Mary transports readers to the frontier of 1875 California, weaving a gripping narrative of family bonds, hidden treasures, and an unlikely love story that blooms amid the rugged landscape of the Wild West. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear more about our newest book giveaway for this month. Now, here's my conversation with Mary. Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for returning to the Christian Romance Podcast. I'm so happy to have you back.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Kelly. Always have a good time when we visit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You crack me up, and I can't wait to just hear how you've been doing and hear about these wonderful books you've been writing, especially this book, Whispers of Fortune, that I can't wait to talk about. I've been reading a little bit about it, and I am just so excited for the listeners and everybody to hear more about it. So what's new? What's going on in your family and your life? What is new and exciting with you?
Well, it's winter in Nebraska, so there's not a lot, except we're just trying to stay warm.
Yes.
So sort of the same old January. So
Yes, absolutely. Same old January. It's the very same over here in right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So yes, just trying to
boy,
stay trying to stay
yeah,
warm.
stay warm.
Loving the fire. Do you guys have a fireplace?
No, we don't. We kind of would like one, but we live in a 100-year-old farmhouse. And
Oh.
that sounds kind of charming, but it's really not. It's just a really old sort of plain house, but it's fine. We lived here a long time. So
Aw, that's pretty neat. Do you guys have a wraparound porch?
no, it's way simpler than that.
Oh.
We're living in my husband's grandpa's house.
Oh,
So
that's neat. That's fun. I love that.
yeah. So, and he wasn't a man who liked to spend much money. So no, it's a very simple house, but it keeps the rain off our head.
Oh my
So
gosh, I just love it. Oh, that's wonderful. And what a wonderful way to think too. I love those old farmhouses. What year was it? You said 100-year-old
it's
farmhouse?
100 years old in maybe last year. I've been saying it's 100-year-old farmhouse for about 10-15 years. So I kind of lost track. But my father-in-law was 6 maybe when it was built.
Aw.
So and he's been gone a while. So I don't know. He'd be over 100 now. So
Oh, that's pretty cool. That
yeah,
is really cool. That's neat to have that kind of history there, especially tied to your family. That's just
yeah,
wonderful.
it is.
Awesome. Yeah, we have it's funny, my 3-year-old is always we have a pellet stove in the family room where he usually plays, and he's
Yeah.
always like, and it has the fire like, going through it, and he's always like pointing to the fire, like telling my husband, like, if the fire goes out, he's like pointing to it, like telling him he needs to get to it, get to work with the fire. So that's like one of my favorite parts about the snow falling outside. It's nice and calm, and then we're inside, we have the fire, we have a fireplace too.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. But you know what? Staying warm is just, I'm a simple girl too. And I'm happy to just stay warm with a blanket
Yeah.
out of the snow. But yes, well, that is wonderful. So let's just start talking about Whispers of Fortune. I know that, you have all these wonderful, like Western romance,
Yeah.
super neat stories, funny stories that you write. So let's talk about Whispers of Fortune and your characters. Tell us a little bit about it.
Um, the book starts with my hero showing up at the heroine's ranch. He's been searching for his brothers. He was away at college and he's a doctor. And he comes home after 3 years in medical school. That's how long medical school was back then. He comes home to find his mother dead, his horrible bum of a father who'd abandoned the family back and dying, and his 2 brothers have vanished.
Oh my goodness.
So he is in a panic. He stays to bury his father. And then now he's been chasing, and they're in the, south of Sacramento, California. So he looks for him all the way across the country. And he knows, even though he doesn't know, he knows where they've gone because their father has been obsessed all his life with this journal that his father sent back because he found a treasure. He'd gone on the gold rush. This is Brody's grandfather had gone off on the California gold rush, and he sent this journal home saying, I found a treasure, and all these real cryptic, odd clues. And then they never heard from him again. So his father ran off to try to find his father and the treasure, and he's mostly just abandoned the family. He's come home a few times, but it wasn't easy. I mean, we're talking about 1850. There's no train. There's only wagon trains. I mean, it's hard to go west back then. So anyway, and then he comes and he finds them at Ellie Hart's ranch. And of course, he accuses her of kidnapping his children or his brothers and all sorts of terrible things. And she's not very impressed because they've been here a long time. Where have you been? And anyway, they're supposed to be orphans. Why did they have a brother? And why was your father still alive? How did they get out here? So that's the story. And then the brothers are just adamant. They are not leaving. They're not going back. They are staying out here to find the treasure. And they're just scallywags. They're just scamps. And everybody's just trying to keep these orphans off the San Francisco streets, which aren't orphans at all, from falling into terrible trouble. And so they decide finally, if they'll be reasonable about it, Brody will help them hunt for the treasure. So, which he doesn't believe exists. So there's your story.
I have questions.
Okay. I might have answers.
You touched on so many neat things. I have to take it back. First, okay, medical school. Okay, I am a nurse, Mary, so I need to understand. Tell me more about medical school being 3 years. What do they have to do with that?
That's just one of those things I found out when I was reading. He lived in New York City, and his mother, who has struggled all her life because her husband abandoned her, to keep their heads above water, and she begs him to go do this. He gets this opportunity to go to medical school, and she begs him to go, because if you do this, you can save us all.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, he's like, both of us working as hard as we can are just keeping this roof over our heads. I cannot abandon you. And anyway, back and forth. Finally, he goes off to medical school, but he's working. He's sending money home. So he hasn't been home in 3 years. Because anytime he thinks I should go home for Christmas, instead he's like, well, here's some money. I'm going to send that to my mother instead, because we just can't afford for anything. And he loves what he wants to do. And he comes home thinking he's going to save his mother from their grinding poverty, take care of his brothers, make sure they get an education. And she's dead. And then this awful bum of a father has come back home. And anyway, and then his brothers have vanished. So that's medical school. And so then he gets out there to the Two Hearts Ranch, and they're like, oh, we could really use a doctor here at the ranch. We got all these orphans. We got some families in here. So anyway, and he says, I can't. I have to go back. I promised the man who I was working with, the doctor I was working with, I would come back. And this is like a note of honor for me. I cannot not go back. And so he's trying to convince his brothers, and the brothers are like, well, we really liked seeing you again, Brody, but go ahead and go back. We're not coming. We got a treasure to find. And so anyway, that's the push and pull of it. The brothers and their obsession with his brother, which reminds him so much of his father. And his father was a wretched excuse for a father. And he doesn't want to see his brothers put all their energy and all their intelligence and all their will into finding this treasure, because he doesn't think that's the good idea. So anyway.
Well, it sounds like Brody has a really good head on his shoulders, especially if he's being a doctor, he's sending the money home. How do they send money back then? Like, I wonder how.
There's not exactly, I think there was a way.
Okay.
You can wire money to a bank. If you have a bank in Boston, which is where he went to school, and you can put it in a bank, and that bank will arrange to transfer it to a bank in in New York City.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
There
makes
was a
sense.
way, but it's not like now, like PayPal, click.
Oh, I know. Now it's like Venmo me, like it's so
Oh, yeah.
easy, or
Oh, I
Cash App or
know.
something. But yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking about. Like he's sending money home and it's like really gonna take a while to get to
Yeah.
her.
Well, but
So
there's a train now, so it's better. So,
true. True. Oh,
so
how many brothers are there? How many
there
brothers does
are
he have?
there are three brothers. There's
Okay.
Brody, and then he had a little sister who died mainly from when she was way too little when their father ran off, and
Mm,
they were always cold, they were always hungry, they were always struggling, and he really blames his father's abandonment for his sister dying.
mm,
And then, so that's a big resentment he has against his father and against this nonsense about treasure. So then his father comes back a defeated man, and he settles in, and his mother forgives him, and pretty soon here's two more babies, but there's a big gap in age between Brody and his two little brothers. So, and then his father sticks around for a while, and then he runs off again. So Brody's really, really not impressed with his father.
Oh, I really like Brody. It seems like he goes off, he becomes this doctor, and he really has that sense. There's always like a certain responsibility with the oldest, right? With
Yeah.
no matter what the bond is, no matter about the age gap, the oldest always wants to take care of everybody and make sure that he's doing the right thing. So I love that, like, nobility that it seems like he has.
Yeah, and he really blames this treasure for killing his little sister
Yeah, yeah.
and for his mother's lifetime of living in a terrible little apartment, cold and hungry all the time. And so, whereas the little brothers are like charmed by their father and his vision
Mm.
of treasure, so so they kind of had a different experience with it. Brody was old enough; he had to go to work. He and his mom insisted he go to school, but he's working nights and weekends, delivering groceries and whatever jobs there were back then. So anyway, so they have a really antagonistic opinion of that book with his brothers. It's a big tension between him and his brothers. So
Oh yeah, for sure. So what happens? Okay, so Brody ends up at the Two Hearts Ranch, which
yeah,
is Ellie Hart, right? Is
yes,
who's the owner of the ranch. And what is
she and her. She's got two brothers and a sister, and
Oh,
they are
okay.
all equal owners in this ranch.
What is Ellie like?
Um, Ellie is she's had her heart broken by an unfaithful fiance.
Hmm.
So she's very sour on the whole idea of love. She saw her older sister's husband get killed in a shootout, somebody trying to rob him. She doesn't have a lot of faith in forever. She
Hmm.
just knows that life is scary, and she's happy at the ranch. And they run this orphanage now at the ranch. They take all these children off the streets of San Francisco and bring them out to the ranch where they're fed and they're cared for. And a big part of that is school.
Hmm.
And Ellie's a teacher at this school, but she's a terrible teacher.
What makes her a terrible teacher?
She just says things like, something about the way I handle children just makes them act up worse instead of calming them down. So anyway, then when Brody comes, and then there's an emergency, and he steps in to help, and she helps him, and she realizes she really likes helping him. She's all of a sudden aware, like, maybe I'm not just a failure, maybe I'm just a bad teacher.
Hmm.
I maybe could be a nurse. So anyway, so she gets lured into helping him, and then the boys are the two boys are just scamps. They're very funny, and they're just troublemakers, and they're also very smart. So nobody wants to give up on them, but oh my gosh, they keep running off, and nobody knows where. Well, it's because they're running into the mountains to look for treasure.
Ah.
And so then they finally come back, and they mainly think the reason they came back is because they're hungry. And they're just not impressed with these boys. At the same time, they care about them, and they're trying to help them. That's what their goal is on this ranch with this orphanage. So anyway,
That sounds really fun. And it definitely sounds like it has, being that this is the Christian romance podcast, it definitely has some forced proximity tropes and different,
yeah, uh-huh.
I love that. I love that. Are they like immediately kind of smitten with each other, or do they have to work at it considering she doesn't really believe in
At first,
that.
Ellie threatens to shoot him because he comes charging into the house. So that's not immediate. But then
I
she
love it.
sees what he's after and that he loves his brothers and is worried to death and has been scared to death all the way across the country. And so she sees that he loves his brothers and all this madness. And then, really, the first day, one of the ladies on the ranch, one of the wives of one of their cats, goes into labor.
Oh.
And so he needs more hands. He needs help. And she helps deliver this baby. And she's just got stars in her eyes. It was such a wonderful experience. And so they're kind of drawn to each other in that because she just loved how Brody handled that. And anyway, so they're both furious at each other and then drawn to each other within 24 hours.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That is wonderful. So they're like frenemies to lovers in a way,
Yeah.
over one day, the 24
because
hours.
like he's walking her back to the ranch house from this house where he delivered the baby, and there's starlight, and a gentle breeze, and they're drawn to each other. So anyway. So
I love it. It sounds amazing. I cannot wait to read this. How she goes to shoot him, and because what's funny about that about women. I don't want to like generalize, but I do want to say women, knowing myself even with babies, with the birth of a baby. It's so funny because you really do. Like when I was in nursing school, I remember watching. I was younger. I actually went to nursing school when I was in my late 20s. So I wasn't like super young. But when I was standing there and watching this, I was actually watching a C-section. And the C-section is intense because it's like a real surgery. It's very much like they really are getting in there, and the doctors, I did not see like where her elbows were. I was like kind of freaking out a little bit. I was like, this is a lot. Okay. What is going on? And all of a sudden, they pull the baby out, and I am bawling. I was like crying during this because it was
it's
so
like you've witnessed a miracle.
Yes, it really was. Even in the midst of this really surgical procedure, it wasn't like the typical. So I can totally picture Ellie just falling for him a little bit, or at least being in awe of his competency in the midst of all of that going on, because it's very emotional. It's a very emotional, amazing time. And like you said, I mean, it's a miracle. It's just a wonder to be a part of it. So that is really cute. I think that's a wonderful little addition that you put in there. So this story revolves around this kind of mysterious journal, right? So this potential treasure hunt where his younger brothers are getting like enamored by this. So do you want to talk about, obviously no spoilers, but why don't you talk about that a little bit, how the journal comes into play? I know that you had mentioned it already, but how does that happen, and what does Brody have to do about it? Well, no spoilers, like I said.
Yeah, well, the clues are just cryptic. His grandfather could just barely write.
Okay.
So they don't know. They're sure this is his handwriting, but then some of the time they realize this journal. Really, one of the big clues that kind of propels him on is they realize, and Brody doesn't realize that he just knows this hated journal that they had in the house. But Ellie or someone realizes the journal itself is really old. And all of a sudden, Brody's eyes are kind of opening like, I'd hate this journal. And yet, Grandpa found something. What did he find? And obviously, the journal's part of it. So, anyway, it's so they know there is something out there, but they don't know what. And the boys, they think it's diamond mine or chest full of gold. And Brody's like, well, maybe we could learn some history from this journal. That might be kind of cool. And the boys don't want to talk about history. They want to talk about gold doubloons. So anyway, and so it takes 3 books to get to the end of this. They kind of find their way to the end of this book in a first step, and then the next step is another one of the family, and then a woman who comes searching for these boys who ran away from the orphan train, that they are not orphans. And anyway, so they go searching again, and so it takes them 3 books to find the stupid train.
No, but that's really fun. I love that. And you can do so many fun things with that, doing the different like clues that they find and things.
Yeah,
And
that's hard. That's
yeah,
kind of tricky.
it's really
Mostly I'm just
tricky.
having bad guys shooting at each other. So I had to try to come up with some clues.
It's
All
really
very
tricky.
cryptic.
Especially because it sounds almost like a mystery a little bit because you don't know if they're gonna get this treasure, and then they're doing,
Yeah,
it almost kind of follows that arc of like a mystery would, because you wanna
yeah,
throw clues
yeah.
out, but you don't want it to
And when
be
word
revealed.
kind of gets out about treasure, all of a sudden other people are like, "There's
Mm.
treasure. Wait a minute, let me see what you got here." And then so then there's bad guys and there's trouble. And
Oh my
so,
gosh, I love it, I love it. So you always gotta throw in those bad guys.
oh well, what else? I don't think I know how to write a book without bad guys. I've seen people do it, so I'm kind of ashamed of myself.
Oh, no, it's great, it's great.
But that's what I always do. Give me a bad guy in here. So
Absolutely. And it switches things up. It kind of, it pushes your protagonist, it pushes Brody and Ellie to their brink, it just
yeah,
puts the pressure on them. So they're gonna have to Ellie's gonna have to get out her gun, get some of these bad
yeah.
guys too.
Well, Ellie's pretty tough. These guys are, we don't really think of California now as the rugged Western life, but back then it was just as wild of the West as anywhere else. So,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
she's a pretty tough Western woman. So,
Now this kind of time period you really have an affinity for, right? Was it different than in this book versus some of your other books, like this time period? Did you have to do a little bit different
it's kind
research?
of all the same time period.
Hmm.
I usually go from post Civil War to about 1875, 1880, somewhere in there. And this is 1873, maybe. So that's after the train. These little things just matter. I don't
They do
know.
matter though, Mary.
I mean,
They
Brody's
do.
in New York and he's supposed to go to California. How am I supposed to get? I can't get in a wagon train. It's going to take me 5 months. But then on the other hand, his brothers wouldn't be out there if they'd had to go to a wagon train. But hopping on that orphan train for free, that worked. Yeah, that's just what I seem to love. I love the cowboys and the kind of the Wild West, and you sort of got to be your own law and order because there just isn't any. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
so that's about my era. I've never done Civil War, so yeah. So this is the same, and this is post Gold Rush. So California's getting to be settled, and still they're pretty much in the Wild West. So
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Could you imagine living? Would you want to live in back in that time?
oh
Now,
no,
knowing
I'm
now.
really a big fan of air conditioning. Cars. I can just see me trying to hitch up the team and go to town. Oh my gosh.
And
I would
cars.
not have done well.
Oh
So
my
I
goodness.
think my husband could have handled it. He's pretty good, but I think I'd have been in big trouble. I'd have fallen off the wagon train the first time it crossed a creek and drowned. That would not have been good. So
Oh my gosh, you crack me up. I love that the first thing you said was air conditioning, especially in California. Like this, there's
oh,
deserts and all that out
oh
there.
my gosh.
It would be so hot. Oh, I can't
I
even deal
know.
with it. I'm like hot thinking about it right now.
No.
That is you're so funny. Oh, do you remember the game? I remember when I was young. I grew up in I was born in 82. So I grew up in like the 80s, 90s, like, when computers were just starting to get in schools. And we used to play this game called the Oregon Trail. Do you remember
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh yeah, we had that. You're the age of my children, Kelly, for heaven's sakes. But my children had that game, and so I played it a little bit. Yes.
Yes, yes. That's what I think about whenever you're talking about like making this quest for the
Yeah.
gold rush.
That ox walking across the street, and then you
Yes.
get dysentery or cholera or something.
Absolutely. Yes, the dysentery. Oh, it's so funny. But it was hard. It was a hard game just for that.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine
Yeah.
in real life. Oh my goodness, you crack me up. So I love the idea of having this like mysterious journal and treasure, and then these like comic relief with his brothers. How much of an age gap is it between Brody and the boys?
I think Brody is 23-ish. I mean, 3 years in college, so maybe if he went when he's 18, 19, 20, 21, been a year since he could get back. And then the boys are 16 and 13, maybe.
Okay.
So there's enough of a gap that they don't. He almost sees himself as a fatherly figure
Yeah.
because, of course, their father was never there. So between him and their mom, they kind of got these little boys most of the way grown up before Brody had to leave. So
Yeah, for sure. And especially in those ages too, the boys are like teens kind of coming into their own and
yeah,
here in
yeah,
the
and especially the 16-year-old. He's like, I know 16-year-olds who are married men with jobs. I 16's not that young anymore.
Mhm.
And then the 13-year-old, he's just the wild man. He's the one that's just obsessed with the treasure. So anyway, between the two of them, so
I love it. I love it. It sounds super fun, very you, very fun. Funny,
yeah.
especially with the western and the bad guys. It just is very exciting. I love it so much. With the ranch and the orphanage, what gave you the idea for that? For like to make the ranch be an orphanage?
Where do you get the ideas for a book? Okay, I don't know if you've heard of my series, The Lumber Baron's Daughter,
Mm.
but this ranch was important in book 2 of that series.
Oh, okay.
So my husband was reading the book, which he does when they come, but he doesn't really help me write them in any way. And he's reading along and he's like, "Is this the new book? This sounds kind of familiar." And I'm thinking, why would it sound familiar? Oh, because you've read the book with the Two Hearts Ranch in it before.
Mm.
So anyway, book 2 of that was set at the Two Hearts Ranch, and they found gold at the Two Hearts Ranch.
Oh.
And now all of a sudden they were already well to do with this big ranch and a lot of head of cattle. And all of a sudden they've got all this gold and they are determined to do something good with it.
That
So
is
when we
cool.
ended that book, they hadn't really decided what. Well, now we start this book a year or two, or I don't know how much later, and that's what they've decided to do. They're going to bring children out here and help them because his wife really believes in education. She's a very educated woman for that era. And she's just like, we need to help these children find what they're meant to do with their lives. And that takes education and that takes food and warmth. And so anyway, and they're not terribly important in this book because like they're gone for most of this book. But she's a factor in it, and the ranch is what it is because of what they went through in that book. Because
That's really cool. I love that. I love how you picked it up. Like they, that book was like, what are we going to do with this? And then you're kind of continuing it. I love it. I think
yeah,
that's really sweet. And what better thing to do than have an orphanage with children, especially with education, and try to help promote literacy with
yeah.
them and writing and different things. I mean, I would imagine it wasn't as easy. I mean, what was even schooling? How old were they like
Well,
going to school?
they
Like would they
they
go?
had they had the school is 1 year old when
Oh,
this
okay.
book begins, and they've already had a couple of kids that are finished. They find these kids on the streets in San Francisco, and they bring them out. And one of her goals, Michelle's goals, is to find out what their gift is and
Mm.
what they love, and give them a basic education, but then educate them and aim them for what they want. And there they are in a ranch. Anybody want to be a cowhand? She owns a lumber dynasty. Anybody want to be a lumberjack? And then they are part owners because they're wealthy. The lumberjack people are, and they got part owner in a lot of businesses
Hmm.
in San Francisco and Sacramento, and like the brother in book 2 was a sailor. Anybody want to go to sea? And they try to figure out what their gifts are, and then educate them, to strengthen that, and then help them get a start in life.
Aw.
So that's what the school is for, and they go all the way down to the lowest grade, and they go all the way up to kids that are done with school now. So
That is so neat. I love that you tie that in because that's not just because that's really setting them up for success, almost like in the
yeah,
trades and things like that nowadays. I mean, that's
yeah.
even like thinking about my oldest is 11 and I was like thinking about because he's like he's really into writing. He loves creative kind of things and
Oh, that's wonderful.
I love that, and he writes his own comic books, he makes his own characters, he makes Lego stop
Oh,
motion
I love
videos,
that.
it's so
Yeah.
fun, and I told him, I said, "Buddy, if this is something you wanna do, like, we will focus on that," like how you said, like, how they focus on the kids' gifts and try to steer them in that way, like something that they would want to do, And I think that it's neat too that, he looks at me and he's like, Mom, you're a writer. And, and I'm like, yeah, we can
Yeah,
totally publish your book. It'll be amazing.
sure.
Um,
These days, you just can publish it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Go ahead and
100%.
finish that comic book and get it out there. You'll be one of the Avengers before you know it.
Absolutely. He actually did create his own superhero. Like he named his superhero and everything. It's so
How
cute.
fun.
I know. It's really fun.
The only thing I might advise him as a writer is go ahead and get a day job.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're going to want to pay rent until the books take off.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh. That's very good advice, Mary, for sure. But yes, no, I love that. I love that focus on the trades. I think that that's just a wonderful thing. And just what a wonderful way to kind of tie in your stories together. I think that is so fun. And I bet your readers are going to absolutely love that.
Well, I really love that when having characters that somebody called it, they exist in this universe.
Yes, yes.
And I always think, well, that's Marvel comic book stuff, but no, it's so the fact that somebody from another book would walk through the pages of this book, well, of course they exist, they live there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I enjoy doing that. That's just something that I just think is fun.
Oh yeah, it's super fun.
Sometimes I just do it for me, and other people don't even get it, but I'm still happy.
No, I think that that's something that is so, I know me just personally as a reader, I love that too, because once you fall in love with these characters, once you spend so much time reading their stories, you're like, oh, what happened next? What
happened to them?
Yeah, what
where
happened
are they
to
at
them?
now?
Especially if they're getting all this gold, you want to see like, what did they do? What's going on? What's the legacy, right? So it's really neat to see that. It's exciting. So we are almost at time, Mary. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. But before we go, do you have any? I usually ask for a Bible verse that has encouraged you along your writing journey and along the way. But do you have a particular one that maybe ties to the themes in this book?
Well, what I'm thinking about with this book is they're trying to teach these boys to not lay up their treasure on earth. To lay up and riches beyond measure. That's one of the things that's what the title of the third book is, Riches Beyond Measure. And so they're just always trying to balance this. They all kind of get this fever for the treasure, and at the same time they're just like, a whole boatload of riches right on your heads when you're 16 years old. Should we ever find this fictional treasure, that could ruin your life. Because that's because Brody keeps coming back to his father, who didn't even find the treasure, but searching for this treasure ruined their life. It ruined their family's life, made life so hard. So Brody keeps trying to get them to come back to the education you're getting. And if we find enough gold that you can, live on the rest of your life, that's not what you want. We want to do something real with our lives, and that's not just to support ourselves, it's to make the world a better place and to find out what God has for you. So that's what I keep coming back to is we don't want to lay up our treasure on earth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I can totally see how that would be such a theme that's interwoven throughout the story, because it's so true, right? Having this focusing, it almost becomes an idol, right? The treasure, like they're looking at that and they're not worried about anything else. And I love that Brody is the one to bring that kind of wisdom to them. You can't, and it's good wisdom for all of us, really. I mean, we don't want to focus on too much, and it's hard, right? Because we're like busy, we're trying to work, we're trying to do all these different things, and it's hard raising families but our real treasure is in heaven.
We spend so much of our lives trying to get ahead and get enough that's you just lose focus on what's really important. So
absolutely.
And a lot of us worry about poverty. And I'm trying to see there's a worry in riches too. There's a worry in anything that becomes more important to you than faith and God and decency,
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Anyway. Wonderful point, Mary. I love it. Well, where is the best place if anyone listening, so your readers that are listening, if they want to connect with you and then to get a copy of this wonderful book, Whispers of Fortune?
Well, I've got a website, maryconnealy.com. And one of the easiest things, if you really want to follow my books, is either sign up for my newsletter, which you can do through my website, Or if you go to Amazon and follow me, then you get an email every time I have a book released. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Absolutely. And reach out. Absolutely. And leave reviews for Mary whenever you are loving
yeah,
her books.
I really, really appreciate that. So I'm on Facebook too, and Twitter, and Instagram, but sometimes I forget I'm on some of those places. So I'll try to keep information coming, but
It's a lot to keep up with all these places.
it is.
It's nice to connect in all these places, but yeah, usually that's what I always tell my readers too, is the best place is email. Just go to your website and connect through email, because then it's such a direct connection with you too. It's simple. Just hit reply. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mary. It's been just a wonderful pleasure chatting with you again. And I am so excited to read this Whispers of Fortune book. I think it sounds amazing. And I am just so grateful to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on, Kelly.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with one book lover like yourself. We love to bless as many people as we can with exclusive interviews and, of course, great books. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a selection of Christian romance novels and some extra goodies too. This month's theme is International Love. We're giving away 5 heartwarming Christian romance books filled with love, second chances, and faith, set in breathtaking locations like Ireland, Scotland, France, and beyond. Whether you're listening right as this episode comes out or in the future and don't want to miss out on the giveaway, no worries. You'll find the link to the current giveaway on our website, ChristianRomancePodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.